After letting all the fights in Shinjuku Showdown conclude, I wanted to now use this opportunity to come back from the dead with my Kashimo Agenda and explain to the community why this man is not a fraud. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, he definitely wasn't a major contribution against Sukuna, and is he wasted potential? Yes, but we can talk more about that later. Primarily today we will be looking at his power and retrospect of the JJK verse. And this video is essentially me explaining to you guys why he's not a fraud. Kashimo's first technical appearance is when he completely dismantles Panda in his strongest state like it was nothing, which already shows him being capable of surpassing grade 1s like Mekamaru. Mind you, Kashimo is just now getting accustomed to this new body, as he's not a sorcerer from this era, but rather from one from 400 years ago. So it's kind of cool to see someone like that interacting with someone like Panda, who in his era feels very out of place. We'd see him of course fight Kinji Hikari, where he'd ultimately lose. However, a lot of fans like to miss context within that fight and just run with the fact that Hikari just beat him. During the fight, we see Kashimo not only display superior power and skill, but Kashimo just had way more chances to rip Hikari apart than vice versa. Hikari's best way of defeating Kashimo was gambling with luck, which Kashimo also gambled with, as he didn't want to stall out Jackpot and rather fight it head on. And even after all of this, Hikari had to end up getting Kashimo into the water so that he could neutralize him. And on top of all of that, Kashimo doesn't even use his curse technique, as he wants to save it for Sukuna, meaning Hikari was truly never a threat to Kashimo to begin with. Now, Kashimo's other fight in the series, unfortunately, is against the strongest in the verse, so yeah, and this is where this infamous panel happens. A lot of people like to make fun of Kashimo for getting waffled and being the waffled one, but no one likes to talk about how he was the first one to fight Sukuna, meaning he fought arguably the least weakest version out of anyone in Shinjuku that isn't Gojo Satoru. Kashimo, during his fight with Sukuna, immediately unleashes his curse technique, which is the Mythic Beast Amber, a technique that enhances Kashimo's physicality and allows him to overwhelm Maguna relatively quickly. This was before the transformation took full effect as well, but as we know, Kashimo's luck would come to an end when Sukuna transforms into his Heian era form and would show off the world slap, along with an AoE version of this attack that just gets him waffled. From this point on, Sukuna would fight Yuji, who would literally weaken his soul with every single punch that he landed on him. And mind you, anytime he landed a Black Flash, those punches would hit his soul exponentially. And on top of this, he fought quite literally the rest of the verse. Kashimo, as well, in retrospect, beat down one of their top fighters. Although he is a fraud, he still is recognized as one of the best modern sorcerers around. And he definitely fared better against, let's say, someone like Ryu, who is physically stronger than Yuta. I do think Yuta in a fight with Kashimo more than likely would win, but this is mainly through domain expansion. Other than that, or being in Gojo's body, I actually don't see how Yuta is even putting the hands on Kashimo at all. Saying that Kashimo isn't strong because his techniques didn't work on Sukuna is like dismissing Jogo as being strong because he got destroyed by Gojo. Kashimo, in comparison to the rest of the verse, would be a threat, as he's one of the only characters who can emit lightning and enhance blasts of these attacks with his curse technique. A lot of people like to say his electromagnetic wave blasts are light speed, but I do not think this is true. Not only is the verse consistently reaching like the double-digit Mach range, because we have things like Naoya and Piercing Blood being emphasized as very fast within the verse, and even characters like Nanami and Maki in the anime are like blitzing characters' perception and even bullets, which would relatively put most of the verse in the hypersonic range, as the Maki that performs this feat is one of the weaker characters within the verse. And even if we say that his blasts are light speed, they're technically only light speed in a vacuum of space, and Kashimo needs to charge these blasts up. So if somebody is relative to Kashimo's combat and reaction speed, they more than likely would be able to dodge this just because of how long it takes to charge it up. Anywho, Kashimo regardless is one of the only characters who can shoot some of the fastest attacks within the verse, and can take his power to a whole other level on top of this, along with the fact that he still fought one of the stronger versions of Sukuna within Shinjuku, meaning at the very least he should be superior to the likes of Sukuna in Shibuya, and Disaster Curses, who are way inferior to him, like Jogo, who both can cause earthquakes and destroy a majority of Shibuya, putting Kashimo's base attack potency around the 2 to 4 megaton range. And again, he can still amp himself to a whole other level. So Kashimo, even without his curse technique, is like a mini nuclear bomb, to be honest. And now with that out of the way, let's talk about Kashimo's narrative, which pretty much requires him to be one of the strongest characters. Now, I know a lot of you are going to probably call me a hypocrite because when it comes to One Piece scaling, I hate the narrative use. But unlike with characters like, let's say, Dragon, Kashimo not only has the feats to back it up, but it does go well with his character. Kashimo is someone from a past era where he felt unsatisfied, and so he wanted to put his power to the test against Sukuna since he was the strongest sorcerer in history. Sukuna, after meeting Kashimo and initially not thinking much of anyone other than Gojo, he'd soon quickly come to acknowledge Kashimo as strong and as someone who stands on a unique path similar to that of himself and Gojo. And although it's not the exact same thing, of course, it's still a path of the strongest, and he could never truly satisfy his hunger until Shinjuku Showdown. And although everyone wants to say his death was sorry and he sucks, he in the end got what he wanted and finally satisfied his hunger. I just wish we got more than 2 chapters to really characterize him, especially since he was a highlight of the previous arc. But regardless if you love him or hate him, Kashimo without a doubt is cracking the top 10 strongest Jujutsu Kaisen characters, with a lot of people maybe even arguing he's in the top 5. I personally wouldn't go that far, but hey, I'm not complaining about any Kashimo agendas, you know what I'm saying? Oh my god, we're farmers, boys.